From NBC 10 News, welcome to a Decision 2022 debate. The Democratic race for Rhode Island governor. Live from Johnson & Wales University in Providence. Here is NBC 10's Gene Valicenti.
And hello again, everyone. I'm Gene Valicenti. We're fortunate to be here at Johnson & Wales University in downtown Providence for our Democrat primary debate. Joining us now, we want to get right to it. From left to right on stage here is former Secretary of State Matt Brown, former CVS President Helena Bonanno Folks, Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea, Governor Dan McKee, and Dr. Luis Daniel Munoz. Welcome to all of you. We're dispensing with opening statements to get right to the questions. We have a few from the Johnson & Wales studio. Students will get to that along the way. It's largely up to you, though, to fact check each other. You're allowed to mix it up, keeping it reasonable. We've gone over the ground rules. I'm here to moderate and keep it moving. Our team timekeepers are working in the back to try to keep everything balanced. Let's get right to it. Rhode Island is under construction. I went over a stretch of the 610 connector today. I haven't been over it. And when I go to work, I see a new bridge on Route 37 that's about to be snapped in. That is roadworks left to us by Governor Raimondo. Do you share that vision? Will you keep roadworks in place, and does that include the truck tolls? Let's begin. Matt Brown, two-part question.
No, we will get rid of the truck tolls. We've got funding now from the federal government to keep improving our infrastructure. We've got to make sure it takes climate change into account. But the root of the problem here, Gene, is that the people in power in this state for years have not been up there working for the everyday people. They've been working for big corporations and the very wealthy. As soon as Dan McKee was appointed governor, he funneled millions of dollars to his friends at the ILO Group. His administration is now under criminal investigation by the FBI. The FBI is currently investigating, among others, Donald Trump for stealing state secrets, the organizers of the January 6th insurrection, right, and Dan McKee's administration for corruption.
I understand the strategy. The question, though, is you're keeping roadworks. You said you'll get rid of the truck tolls. Are you keeping the vision of the way we're going with DOT?
Well, we've got to shift the vision to take the climate crisis into account.
Got it. Let's go to Helena Bonanno Folks. Are you keeping roadworks? I
would keep the truck tolls in place, and I would step back and rethink transportation. I think it's an opportunity to think about what should transportation look like in the next decade, which is not just construction for cars and buses, but transportation of the future, bikes and other forms of things. And I think the most important thing that I will do from the very beginning is have a team in place that really knows what it's doing and holds itself accountable. Right. I plan to look at every single position in government, because what I bring to this experience is I know how to lead. I led 200,000 people. I had an $80 billion budget. Mm-hmm. You know, I have a sister who lives in Massachusetts, and she says to me, every time I come to Rhode Island, Helena, I cross the border and the roads are terrible. So it is very fair for all Rhode Islanders to say, what isn't working about this system? I don't know what it is, but I know I can get to the root of it and really make it work for Rhode Islanders so they don't have busted transmissions and all the things that go wrong with our roads today.
Right. By the way, you're all getting about a minute to respond, then we'll mix it up. Secretary Gorbea, are the roads terrible in Rhode Island, or are we making some improvement?
Look, we are making some improvements, but I think that we actually do need to take a look at how we're transporting people. Look, everybody deserves to have a reasonable way to get to work, to get to wherever they need to go within our state. I think we've relied too long on cars and fossil fuel related transportation. And so we need to re-examine the way that we are doing transit in this state. Now that might mean, yes, we have to rebuild some of our failing bridges and roads, but it doesn't mean that we go wholeheartedly into that. I think we do need a different vision for how the Department of Transportation works. And I'm glad that I'm going to be working with a number of groups, both in the civil engineering and the transportation world, as well as environmental groups, to set Rhode Island on a more modern path to transit.
Are you keeping truck tolls?
Yes.
Yes. So that's a no, yes, yes. Governor McKee, Jack Reed just sent us another $50 million today to be used on projects right now. Are you keeping roadworks if you get in again?
One of the things that was there when I came in was roadworks, and the DOT, Peter Alveda, had a good plan, and we're building off that plan, right? So we ran the largest surplus in the state's history, Gene. Took $100 million of those dollars and leveraged another $400 million of federal dollars. So we're going to have the funds, but we also have done many things to address the transportation of the future. Not only did we put money in for electric buses, but we also put money in for the cars, charging stations on the cars. We put a rebate program in for electric vehicles. Tremendous amount of movement going into the renewables as you'll see, when we tackle the transportation issue. And we have made a great deal of progress on bridges. We got to continue doing the roads.
And then on truck tolls, Governor?
Yeah, I said yes. I said yes on the truck tolls.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes,
So
on truck tolls.
so yeah, we're going to keep the money flowing in, and we're going to keep on improving our infrastructure. We did inherit an infrastructure that needed help, and we're going to continue to invest in the infrastructure. It's going to be good for our economy.
Let me hold it there. Dr. Munoz, are you going to keep the truck tolls, and do you have a different vision of transportation?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of truck tolls. My biggest concern is residential vehicles will eventually be tolled, and that's just a barrier to entry for a lot of communities. I think that we need to make sure bridges don't fall, but we also need to really focus on alternative means of transportation. We should have intramunicipal trolley systems where people can navigate within their own respective cities and across cities. We don't have that in Rhode Island, which is why people can't go from South Providence to the CIC building. Our economic plan, as well as our transportation plan, needs to align with the future, which is protecting the climate and ensuring that people have economic opportunities. So from my perspective, in terms of building new, we should not be building for vehicles and trucks. We should be building for people who are leveraging energy-based or green-based trolley systems.
All right. Matt Brown, where would you get the money if you get rid of the truck tolls? The surplus is only around for a while.
Well, we've got federal funds coming in for the infrastructure bill. More federal funds will be coming from the new bill that's come out of Washington recently. So, the financing is there. As you know, we're going to raise taxes on the wealthiest 1%. So the financing is there. What we need to do is shift the vision. And I've said that I'll replace Director Alviti and put in place someone who's got a vision for building a transportation system that is dedicated to being part of our plan to get to clean, renewable energy. We're going to make this the first state in the country that does that.
Okay, Helena, he doesn't like the vision. Like, what are you keeping? Are you keeping Director Alviti? He's very popular on the radio with me.
What I am really focused on is we are getting $2.5 billion to come from the federal government. And when Rhode Islanders step back and think about all the money that we will have received from the federal government, we need a leader at the top of this state who knows how to manage money, who's done it in her career, who can hold people accountable and make sure that every dollar we've received and will receive is put to the best use. I talk to too many businesses in this state who say, I've not been able to be part of this whole transportation system. I'm not part of it because I don't know a guy. And I think that's a real problem in our state.
Are you suggesting Governor McKee is not managing the dollars? Go ahead, Governor. That's you, I guess. You're the manager.
Yeah, and we're managing very well.
Right now you are.
Not only on the bridges, the roads, the other transportation modes that are coming our way in terms of electrified vehicles, as I mentioned earlier, electrified stations, as well as the electric buses, which is going to be a big deal, and especially when we're targeting them into areas where high-density communities are being impacted by the fossil fuel buses. That's being done. And let's talk also what's on the horizon here. We've got facilities down in Quonset that are building electrified ferries for people for places up in Maine and Rhode Island. And they're going to be going out, sending them out to the offshore wind. 1,000 kilowatts of offshore wind are going to be there to electrify 500,000 homes. So we know the future. We know what's going to happen, and we're preparing for it.
Let me just let the Secretary get in, and then Dr. Munoz, and we'll switch topics.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, look, the governor said that he would be ready on day one. For 18 months, we really haven't seen boots on the ground kind of difference in terms of how this state is managed. In fact, what we've seen is very negative headlines, and that's part of the problem. We cannot have a state that's known nationally for FBI investigations. That is not the kind of Rhode Island that will generate the kind of economy that really works for everybody.
Governor, that's come up twice now, the Iowa investigation.
I'll let them keep on piling on, and I'll answer it one time. But
go ahead and answer it now. Go ahead. Can you assure us that there's nothing at the end of the street?
Desperate campaigns do desperate things. Lies and false attacks are part of the, certainly part of the issue. What I'm going to do for the state of Rhode Island
is there not?
I thought maybe I can answer the question. Can I answer the question?
Go ahead. Finish. Yes.
Okay. So
you're allowed to mix it up, but go ahead. We'll be polite.
Yeah. So I think that. Like I said, false accusations and attacks are part of the campaign right now. They're going to ratchet up. What I'm going to do is I know what I've done and what I haven't done, and every decision I've made as a governor of the state of Rhode Island has been in the benefit of the people in the state of Rhode Island, and we got the results. We're going from last to first in vaccination. Okay. We're opening up the economy faster than anywhere in the Northeast. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the history of the state of Rhode Island, and there's still good paying jobs available. So the decisions I've made have actually helped the state of Rhode Island.
Dr. Munoz, you have some time to make up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, are we talking about politics or a specific issue here? Because I keep hearing that someone's not going to be operating under the pretense that special interests should dominate their decisions, and yet all I see is insider candidates that have either served in government or worked with governors in the past on things like 38 Studios, standing up here saying that somehow they're going to operate differently. Somehow they're not going to be bartering for union endorsements, or somehow they're going to start thinking about renewable energies, when all I see when it comes to fossil fuel dollars is going into the donor rolls here, including Matt Brown's donor rolls.
He's talking about 38 Studios. You were on the Commerce Board at one point. I think that's you.
Yes, I'd like to answer that, and I'd like to go back to this question about the FBI investigation, because the facts are, and days into the governor's term, he gave a $5 million contract to a friend of his for business that we already had, where they were charging us $1 million. So any Rhode Islander knows that doesn't smell right. And that's why the FBI is investigating this. Okay. I'm very proud of my time on the EDC. I came in after the 38 Studios decision. I worked to clean it up, and we did a great job on that.
By the way, just to keep the record straight, the ILA wasn't a question that came up 2 or 3 times. It was a fair chance for the governor to respond. Nellie, take the last word, then we're going to go. Unless Matt Brown, you'd like to get in on this.
Yeah,
go ahead, Nellie.
No, the only person who actually cleaned up stuff from 38 Studios and this stage is me. Like, I actually did comprehensive lobbying reform so that we wouldn't get into that position in the future. And so, you know, if you want somebody who actually knows how to make government work for you, I'm your candidate.
Matt Brown, take the last word, then we're changing.
Yeah, so the governor tried to laugh off this discussion about the FBI investigation. I think it's the main issue of the night. The fact is that more than a third of FBI criminal investigations end in indictment. So there's a very good chance that Governor McKee will be indicted while in office, and he deserves, the people of the state need to know, if you are indicted, will you resign?
Oh, how ridiculous can you be, Gene? I mean, look.
It's a rough game, Governor. It's a rough game.
You've got to laugh sometimes, right? And the attacks are just outrageous. So
Okay, go ahead.
As governor,
let me finish. Go ahead.
Every decision I've made has been in the best interest of the people in the state of Rhode Island. And as a result, we have the fastest recovering economy, lowest unemployment in the history of the state of Rhode Island, and the highest vaccinated state in the country. So the notion that somehow that the flavor of this questioning is very desperate, and desperate campaigns do desperate things.
All right, we're moving on. Next question. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you. We're moving on. Next question. Who is for taxing the rich? Put your hand up. I believe you are. Anybody else going to tax the rich? Tax the rich. Matt Brown, what does that mean? Matt Brown, what does that mean, tax the rich?
So
what does that mean?
So
Who's rich?
I'll tell you. The people running this state 15 years ago gave a massive tax cut to the richest 1% of people. Those are people, Gene, making over $450,000 a year. That tax cut alone cost the state $1 billion, while they left thousands of our kids without a good education, school buildings crumbling, people struggling to afford their housing, people struggling to afford their health care. And that's been the core problem with the people in power in this state for a long time, including Governor McKee, funneling money to the Superman building to build luxury apartments that most Rhode Islanders will never be able to afford.
So you're tax the rich. Now, Talina Bonanno, folks, you once told me you pay several $1 million in taxes. I assume they want to tax you more. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think it's a very serious question. When you look nationally, I'm very supportive of taxing the rich at a higher level. We have billionaires who should be paying much more in taxes. But we need to be competitive in this state. We have a state which is at a real disadvantage economically. As much as the governor would like to tout his success, we are 49th in this country for GDP growth. We are way behind. The last thing I think we should do is raise taxes, especially coming off a year where we had a $900 million surplus. We also had Secretary Gorbea, who's proposed raising taxes on small businesses. Again, with a surplus and heading into recession, I think that would be a very unwise move.
I'll get to that question. That's tax the big companies. Governor, I was with you at the convention center when John Hazenwhite said, I'm not going to retire here unless you change the retirement rules. He's going to go to maybe Florida, like the other rich people. Are we going to tax the rich out of the state?
Well, first of all, the question is, are you going to raise taxes on businesses in the state of Rhode Island?
No, the question was tax the rich, not businesses. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
You know what John Hazen-White told you. I was there. He said, I can't afford
I think you
retirement.
evaluate.
We can't lose a guy like that, can we?
You evaluate everything, and you make decisions based on where we are right now. We're not going to raise taxes. We're going to lower taxes in the state of Rhode Island. I'm proposing to lower the sales tax. We got rid of the car tax once and for all, as my mom said, finally. And then, and also $250 child credit going out in October to families in the state of Rhode Island. So we're in a good position right now. There is no need to raise taxes at the moment. And we'll look at, first of all, lowering taxes for our small businesses before we start talking about the big
Nellie, on tax the rich, I'm going to ask you about corporations.
Sure.
We're taxing them down to Naples, Florida, aren't we?
No, look, so here's the thing. We need to make sure that everyone who can pays their fair share. And in this country, for too long, those who are wealthy have not been paying their fair share. And what's really going to turn Rhode Island's economy around is not this tax game. If we have affordable homes, if we have education that really is helping kids move forward and be their best, and if we are addressing climate change, companies will not only be coming here, but our local companies are going to be growing like gangbusters because we have the environment that helps growth. Tax policy isn't what's driving it. It's the infrastructure of the people and how they are.
Dr. Munoz, Nellie
tell
Gorbea,
Mr. Hazen-White to be careful with the sinkholes in Florida. You know, it's time to tax the rich in the state of Rhode Island. It's time to understand that the federal government, that's a cop-out, is never going to do that. We need to take a stand here in the state of Rhode Island. Governor Raimundo created a pass-through company tax credit that the rich are leveraging to get deductions on the federal income tax. We need to make sure that we combat that loophole that the rich have and get some of that $144 million back annually that can help us support affordable housing. The Secretary of State said that she helps businesses. Well, when the minority and woman-owned business contract requirements were waived by Governor Raimundo, she did not stand up or do anything. We have people at this stage that continue to say that they're fighting for Rhode Islanders, and they're fighting for themselves. And that's the problem with career politicians. They always fight for themselves.
I just want to caution, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but they can't hear when you applaud that loud. Secretary Gorbea, you were in a commercial saying you're going to tax corporations in Rhode Island.
That's
and
right.
You just kind of
Big
downplayed the notion of raising
corporations.
taxes. Square that for me.
No. Big corporations deserve to pay more. The Democratic Party should be the party of small businesses. And that's exactly what my proposal is planning on doing, to make sure that big corporations, which, I understand a corporate CEO is not going to want, their friends to be taxed more, but I am going to represent the people of Rhode Island. And so that's what we're going to do with my tax proposal.
What is a big corporation? We know CVS is. Is Party's Furniture? Dell's Lemonade?
So it is 90% of the businesses in our state are small businesses, and they're not going to see anything. And by the way, we're looking at equalizing the tax burden to Massachusetts. So by 1%, 1% to allow us to do better schools, to rebuild our infrastructure, to address climate change. I would think that a good corporate citizen would be willing, with the right leadership in place that's actually going to be an effective governor, would be willing to invest that amount of money in the future.
Helena Folks, you said you read through her plan. You differ with what company is big enough?
I still can't figure out if Nellie's changed her mind or if she's changed her plan. But something isn't adding up. When she put her press release out early on and says she was going to raise corporate taxes, honestly, at first I thought she just meant on big companies. The fine print showed, however, that if you were a domestic profit corporation, you would pay 1% more. So we went on her website to look at what those looked like. Dell's, Cello's, Twin Oaks, lots of small businesses would pay more taxes. So I guess the question, Nellie, is have you changed your mind?
No.
And what is the criteria for these small businesses? How many employees exactly are going to...
You two argued this in the last debate. Can we nail it down? Nellie, she's saying that...
She's absolutely incorrect in what she's saying. She's misstating my plan. And I'll say this, again, a corporate leader who has always put profits before people, whose idea of a really good policy is to lay workers off so that then she can get a $29 million, salary. Like, that is not the kind of leadership that we need in the public sector. We need somebody who has shown a track record for helping people.
Answer the question.
The question is, you're misrepresenting my plan.
How many employees then for small business tax increase?
Representing my plan. It is only to be taxing corporations. And you know what? We're looking at 1%.
Defined as what, Nellie?
on whatever it
Defined as
doesn't.
what?
Okay.
Small businesses here. Micro businesses need exemptions on the tangible property tax. It's 1.4% in Newport, 5.5% in Providence. Poor people in the state of Rhode Island cannot get out of poverty because when they start businesses, they are taxed out of business.
And by the way,
those are the businesses we need to help.
Let me jump in on small business.
Matt Brown.
And then come back to
Brown,
me,
go ahead.
please.
I assume you share taxing the corporations, just as Nellie does. More.
Yeah, I mean, a huge problem in this state is that the people in power have taken public money and moved it over to extremely wealthy corporations like Amazon that don't even pay taxes. Just a few weeks ago, Governor McKee cast the deciding vote to take $60 million of our money, public money, and give it to a corporate developer to build a soccer stadium in Pawtucket. It has since come to light, Gene, as you know, that he had a report from his own administration that shows that that deal is going to lose the state tens of millions of dollars. He's now redacting critical information from public records. Did you think you could cover up from the people of the state the fact that that deal that you put through is going to lose the people of this state tens of millions of dollars?
Go ahead, Governor. Are you redacting anything? It's
Well,
fair
let me
to say
first talk
it's
about. Let me talk
controversial.
about the small business. I'll be happy to address, that another false and desperate type of accusation there, right? So on small business, no one has done more for small business than I did as a lieutenant governor and now as a governor. Millions of dollars went out to the small business and grants, over 5,000, 6,000 of those grants. We also put money towards the small businesses and the minority business. I reshaped the entire diversity office. 16% of the state contracts are going to women-owned and minority-owned businesses. That has never happened before. On the tangible, I did put a small business article in the budget this year. Well, now when people trade in their motorcycles, they're going to get the sales tax off of that. It's going to help the small business. It's going to help people in the state. We're going to continue doing that. On the tangible, put legislation in to provide local communities, as a former mayor, I understand it, local communities can, now they don't have to go to the General Assembly to get approval to give some lot of relief on the tangible.
I've got to keep us on track. We've moved to Tidewater. That was my next question. Governor, they're banging you on this. It's factually correct to say it's controversial. I think that's fair. Now, you can go ahead and defend it.
Well, being a governor is controversial, as we all are finding out here tonight, right?
I agree with that. That's factually correct.
But yes, let's take a look what I've done with dollars that we had in our surplus and also the federal dollars.
No, Governor, on Tidewater, he's saying that...
Tidewater, in the reference, you have to take Tidewater in the reference of the work that I'm doing to create an economy in the state, put people to work, and in creating a long-term economy for the state of Rhode Island. $40 million to help the fisheries down in Galilee. $63 million into Quonset to help the people on the export, import, and the wind. Another $35 million to help to establish a wind report, for offshore wind in East Providence. Another money into the Superman building to put people in downtown to help those small businesses there as well. We're going to put money on the We're going to put money on the AMP Center on the roof to allow that.
Governor,
so
that's great. But let me narrow. We're talking about Tidewater. Go ahead, Dr. Munoz.
As a financially struggling city of Pawtucket, where I live, that cannot even open the school doors on time today, it amazes me that you think that Pawtucket has $10 million and that we can shift $26 million away from affordable housing towards a soccer stadium where clearly the data shows it's not going to create economic opportunity.
Well, first of all, that's not true. We didn't put any more dollars into that package than what was already there. And then as well as also, this is what the city of Pawtucket has offered, the $10 million. So I think they know how to manage their community. They do a very good job. Mayor Grebian does a very good job.
Let's let the other two in. Go ahead, Secretary.
We have to move away. No. We have to move away from an economic development policy that is the shiny object, right? And that benefits the very few, to one where we are investing in local businesses, addressing the housing crisis, education, and climate change. Those are the keys to really doing economic development in the state. It is not one-time deals like this. That's what we have to move away from so that the people can actually be a part of this economic boom. That's the problem.
Okay, it is your turn, Helena. On Tidewater.
I think the Tidewater deal is clearly emerging as a big problem for this state. I've been saying this all along, and so I reiterate the fact that we had an opportunity 18 months ago to do a very good deal. I think the governor made a big mistake, but the bigger mistake was actually not doing what leaders do. pulling really smart people together, saying to each other, the cost just went up 50%. What could we do that would really help Pawtucket? And I think what I bring, which is very different to this equation, is I've negotiated hundreds of great deals in my life. I know how to build a thriving business and economy. And ultimately, the reputation of this state is really important to us. We have a governor who is under FBI investigation, and we have a Secretary of State who'd like to raise small business taxes. None of this will help us drive a great economy, and I do know how to do that.
Matt, you started this. Go ahead and finish, then we're moving to education.
Yeah, Governor McKee, you know, Gene laid out some rules at the beginning about some protocols. I've made a number of statements that you have said is false without backing them up. You're under FBI, your administration's under FBI investigation. That is true. You cast the deciding vote to take $60 million in public money for a deal that you had a report at the time that said that it was going to lose tens of millions of dollars for the state. Is that not true? Is it not true that you are now redacting critical information from public documents about that deal? What is not true about any of those statements?
Go ahead, Governor, hit them.
Well,
hold off, audience. Go ahead, Governor. Answer the three. Let's get them out of the way.
I'm not going to turn my back on the city of Pawtucket like these people on this stage want to do.
The city of Pawtucket down the river. They're stuck with a $10 million debt.
That is not true.
Because of your deal. How are they going to pay for that, Governor?
Gene, the city of Pawtucket offered the $10 million. They know how to manage their community. I'm a former mayor. I understand what they're doing.
Did you show them the report that you had that showed the deal was going to lose tens of millions of dollars?
Can I answer the question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Now, let him answer.
I mean, the badgering on the stage here is a little unprofessional, by the way. You're sweating down there, so keep sweating, and you're being a little bit unprofessional there. So, the fact of the matter is, the people in the Galilee and the fisheries are going to be very happy with that investment. The people in Quonset, for thousands of more jobs, are going to be happy with that investment. The people in Providence are going to be very happy with the investment we're making in Superman Bill. And by the way, also I figured out how to solve the bus terminal problem in Providence. They haven't done. And the people of Pawtucket, when we finalize the project there, the people on the stage here obviously don't know how to get it done. I do, and it's going to be a good project.
Because of the communities that I come from are the ones that suffer from bad deals like that one. Like 38 Studios 2, which Helena Folks was actually in line of giving them more money. And the governor, at this point in time, in terms of the soccer stadium, fails to acknowledge that when you front money, when you promise the money up front, right, the project becomes too big to fail. It becomes too big to fail, and it's going to land on Pawtucket kids' heads.
Okay, Governor, he's entitled to answers. Okay. Yeah. Folks, please, just the audience. We got a bell here. Cool it. I'm trying to get Governor. He's entitled to some answers to some straight questions. So what's he gave you three.
What's the question? I'll take it from you, Gene. I'm not going to take it from down there. Well, what's the question?
It's part of the format.
You've heard it. Tell me
the first one had to do with ILO. Matt, you want to know what on ILO?
Oh. You said that something I said was false. What I said is that your administration is under FBI investigation. That's more than a third of FBI investigations end in indictment. If you are indicted in office, will you resign, or are you going to put the people of Rhode Island through what they've been through many times before, which is a trial?
Yes, go ahead, Governor. It's factually correct. The FBI investigation is factually correct. Go ahead.
I do not need an investigation to know what I did and didn't do in office. I told everybody they're going to come up empty. They are going to come up empty. There's going to be no charges there because I know what I did. And what I did, and for the people of the state of Rhode Island, what I did was to make sure that every decision I've made as governor has been in the best interest of the people of the state of Rhode Island. So they're going to come up empty on that one, Matt. Okay. What's your next question?
Okay.
Well, just to follow up on
I think we're going to hold it there. You'll get closing statements. We're moving on to education. The next governor will be the de facto school superintendent of Providence. The teachers union wants it back. How long is the state going to keep control of that school union? When does it go back? Helena Folks, when do you hand it back?
Education is the most important topic for me as the next governor because I think our kids have been left behind. And I think it's criminal. If you really think about it, only 33% of our kids pass grade level reading, 20% in math. But I want to give you a striking figure this week. Providence schools just opened this week, and 2,600 of our kids in the city didn't have a teacher on the first day.
I read the story, but my question was, how long are you going to keep them? When do you give it back?
It has to be fixed first, and this governor's not taken responsibility and done everything that he can do. There are many things we owe the the students, the parents, and the teachers of Providence before it goes back. And we've got to have a great functioning system. We need a much better way of managing expenses when it goes back. We need to get more from the contract. There's a lot we can do. And the governor's lost an opportunity to lead here and really make a difference.
You're open-ended. Secretary Goubet, when are they going back? How long is the state keeping them?
Originally the state takeover was going to be done in 5 years, right? Then we got the pandemic and that delayed things. I would like to go back to that 5-year timetable, but I'm not going to do it unless we really hit the mark. And to do that, I believe that for education, we have to make sure that our kids are getting a quality education, that we've really fixed some of the major problems in Providence Public Schools, but I'm going to do it with inclusive leadership, not a leadership that battles others, because the best leadership in the public sector is when you include a variety of opinions around the policymaking table to set those goals, to work together, and I believe that I am the leader that can actually do that.
Dr. Munoz, how long are you going to keep those schools if you're governor?
Yeah, it's important. Everyone says fix the issues. What are the issues? We do not have enough teachers of color in Providence. We also need to ensure that we're not expending double the amount of money on professional development services that we're spending on salaries. We need to reduce the barriers to entry for teachers that are coming from out of state so we can have teachers so that students are not left in classrooms without teachers. We need to make the education funding formula equitable because right now it's concentrating poverty, which is why there's a difference between two parts of the city. And so the conclusion to my answer is when we do these fixes that I've just highlighted, then we give it back to Providence and make sure the state never takes it over again because the state has not done anything to really help Providence.
You're open-ended governor. Do you have more of a firm timetable?
Yeah, well, the idea would be to hand it back to the next mayor during his term or her term. So but there's no one here who has more experience on education than I have, right? So I actually open up schools that, in the top 15 elementary schools in the state of Rhode Island, the schools I opened up are 3 of them. And the only ones with 30%.
So are you turning the only one to charter schools?
Is it we in the question period or are we in the debate period? Let me know. Just qualify this and I'll be happy to participate.
You did start the mayoral charter schools,
but
yes.
About the middle schools. The top 10 middle schools in the state of Rhode Island, 3 of them mayoral academies. The only kids in those, the only schools that have more than 30% free and reduced lunch. Right. So I do know what I'm doing. Martinez is a really good leader. He's going to do a great job there, the Commissioner of Education as well, and we're going to work with the unions, like I did to get the school contract done when they said it couldn't be done. So we are making progress, and as is mentioned, you're on the backdrop of a COVID issue of 2 years. Yeah. We are going to make progress there, and we're going to bring the entire community together. It is a shame that we have leadership in this state that has not recognized that the Hispanic community, the learning community, the children in the Hispanic community are the lowest performing students in the state of Rhode Island. I've known that for years, and we're going to make sure that we take my experience and help the people.
Just a footnote, who is that leadership? Is that the General Assembly?
Any leadership on this stage.
That's a problem.
Let's face it. Let's understand that
they've known it for
we've
years.
known this. I wrote
changes.
reports on this 10 years back. I'm the governor now. We're going to do some good things for education because I'm the one who has the experience, including chairing a school board for 10 years. So I do understand the area, and we are making progress, and the progress is going to continue. And then hopefully we're going to be able to give that back to the next mayor of Providence.
Okay, Matt Brown, you have a get in on this. How long are you keeping those schools? When are you turning them back?
As quickly as possible, a few months. The state takeover.
A few months?
Yeah. The state takeover of the Providence schools was a total failure. How long do we need to wait to turn it back to the city of Providence? And the underlying root of the problem, Gene, is that, as I mentioned before, the people running things in this state gave a massive tax cut to the richest 1% that cost $1 billion. And people have read the Johns Hopkins reports from a few years ago. Those people who came up to look at our schools said they walked out of the school buildings in tears. There were rodents on the floor. There was urine on the floor. There were students who weren't learning anything in the classroom. The teachers are struggling. And the state takeover has been a total failure. So we need to raise taxes on the 1%. We need to fund our schools. We need to raise the starting salary of our teachers. Our teachers' starting salaries average $43,000 a year. They're teaching it during the day, and they're driving an Uber shift at night because they can't make ends meet. We've got to invest in our kids, invest in our schools, and turn the schools back to Providence.
Selena?
But I think the problem with this conversation is we have politicians who just talk a big game but don't have specifics and plans. So let's look at Providence. One of the things that really breaks my heart is there are 24,000 kids in the Providence public school system. Do you know how many applications there were last year for charter schools in Providence? 19,000. And why is that? because those parents are desperate for better schools. Every kid should have access to a great education. Okay. We have $400 million that went directly to cities and towns. 7% of it has been spent. Under the governor's watch, we've not put that money to use. Teaching assistants in K-3 classrooms, before and after school care, summer programs, tutoring. We need mental health counselors in our classrooms. All those things are outlined on my website. I encourage everyone to look at it because no one else has.
But Jean, it's important to acknowledge this, that there's been pandering. There's been pandering on this stage about giving the school system back to Providence. No one talked about the education funding formula.
Who's pandering?
Matt is pandering.
A few months.
Matt is pandering. The education funding formula is the most inequitable thing that we have, which is putting our school systems behind. Okay. And the fact that it wasn't mentioned shows you that he won't fight.
We have a lot of topics to get to.
I'm the one who just said I would raise taxes on the rich and fund our schools.
And I said I'd raise taxes too, and I also said that I would transform the education funding formula, because that is what's keeping students behind.
There's a lot we need to do with that funding.
I have visited every school in Providence. The report, the Hopkins report, was real, but there's tremendous amount of progress that have been made in those facilities.
Okay, we're moving on. Folks, we are moving on. The budget's $13.6 billion. Under you, will it be lower or will it be bigger? Matt Brown.
Well,
the state budget, will it be bigger or lower? $13.6 billion.
Yeah, so we're going to look at the needs that need to be addressed, and we're going to look at the federal funds that are coming in. But what's going to change are the priorities. So the priorities for a long time have been tax cuts for the very rich, tax breaks for massive corporations, Superman building, Tidewater, and so on, while people are struggling to afford health care. People are struggling to afford housing. People can't find a good enough school for their kids. That's what we're going to invest in. So, for example, we are going to build tens of thousands of truly affordable homes that are green and address the climate crisis. Under our plan, no one will pay more than 20% of their income in rent. We're also going to cap annual rent increases at 4%.
I'm going to get to housing, but I asked you if it was bigger or lower, and you said it depends. All right, Helena Foulkes, is that going to be a bigger budget or a smaller budget? 13.6.
It'll be roughly the same, and I think we're coming into a recession, and I think that's one of the things that I worry about. The state needs a leader at the top of the helm who knows how to run something of this size. I ran a budget that was $80 billion. I know how to make hard decisions. I'm assuming the budget will be roughly the same, and I will run a budget that has an education-first approach. We will figure out what we need for schools, and everything else will fill in underneath.
Secretary Goubert, bigger or smaller?
Budgets are a value statement of what we value. In my mind, the smaller or bigger, I mean, it may be either the same or it might be actually bigger because we have greater economic opportunity and greater taxes are being paid, right? That's one way in which a budget gets bigger. That's
one way to look at it, yes.
So, but what you need is somebody who has the leadership skills to work through the budget and make it efficient. Make sure that we're investing in people, in affordable housing and education. Those are the values that I bring into that budget. And by the way, yes, we have to make sure that things like the Equality and Abortion Act pass as part of that budget. And I will make sure that we fund access to Medicaid recipients and state employees so that they can make their own determination over their own bodies and whether or not they need an abortion.
Governor, a bigger budget next year or smaller?
Yeah, so if the people on the stage understood budgets, they know it's going to be smaller. It's going to be less, all right? Because remember, $1 billion of that is not going to be there next year, so you're going to be back down. We're going to make sure that we're raising it only what we need. And last year we raised no taxes. The first year I was budget, no tax increases. There's no reason to raise taxes. Right now we need to make sure that we're managing the budget well. And this year I'll deliver another surplus this year, and we'll invest that surplus into jobs, which is my number one priority, is to raise income in the people in the state of Rhode Island. Yeah, they really don't understand budgets, and if they did, they would know it'd be lower next year.
Dr. Munoz,
let's talk about budgets. Let's talk about budgets. $65 million for 514 full-time employees in DOH, $126 million for private companies. Public dollars siphoned off by private companies. Let's talk about the Department of Corrections, $277 million. Public safety, $168, but public defenders, $14 million. That's a value statement. You know, we need to make sure that we're taking money out of corporations' pockets and putting it in Rhode Islanders' pockets. Do the services that can support healthcare, housing, and our criminal justice system, which is failing our kids.
Dr. Munoz, 13.6. 13.6, is it bigger or smaller under you? That's the.
So what I've just said right now is we've been privatizing our public sector departments. We can take that money back, increase our public sector employees. So from my perspective, it can be net zero or greater, one of the two.
Net zero or greater. All right, I think we've got a variety of answers. Let's talk about.
Because he said none of us on the stage, except for him, Governor McGee, said understand budget.
He did say that. Yeah.
He did say that. He also
I understand this budget. If you knew this budget,
you said
it's going to be lower next year.
You said understand budgets.
Yeah.
He also still, Gene, has said that 3 of the things I've said are false, and he's not responded to one of them. He's sort of thrown some slights around at us, and what I'm seeing here is the arrogance of power. And what concerns me about that is that we have seen far too many times in this state people like this get into seats of power. He was appointed governor. He's under an FBI investigation. He laughed about it. It's not funny for the people of Rhode Island. I grew up here. We have seen this story too many times, Gene, and we heard Buddy Cianci say, many of us, you won't find any stains on this jacket a few months before he was convicted and hauled off to federal prison. So we deserve an answer. If you are indicted, will you resign?
I'll make sure you get my address. I'll make sure that you'll get my address so you can send me an apology for that statement. The fact of the matter is, what I've done in the state, I know what I've done, and I know what I haven't done.
The FBI doesn't
There's
waste
no
its
need
time,
to answer
Governor.
that question because it's never going to happen. So I've known what I've done and I haven't done. I've made decisions on the best interest of the people in the state of Rhode Island each and every single time, and we're getting the results.
Okay.
These are verbatim the things, same things Buddy
Matt,
Cianci said.
I think we've made that point 3 times now. He's given you the answer he's going to give you tonight. Helena Bonanno, folks, you do know budgets. I know that as president of CBS. The governor says you don't. You square it for me here?
I do know budgets. I ran a budget, as I said before, of $80 billion. I had 200,000 people working for me. So I resent that statement. I also resent Nellie's statement that because I was a corporate CEO, I don't understand the power of what good business can do. In fact, I led the decision at CBS to get out of tobacco. This was a very hard decision in 2014. We walked away from $2 billion a year in sales because we put people over profits. And it was a tremendous decision. It was also very personal for me. I'd lost my own mother to lung cancer. And so I talk to business leaders all over this state who think about their employees as their family. They want them to grow. We want businesses here to feel nurtured and encouraged so that they can hire more people.
Okay.
And I think under my leadership, you'll get a level of that you won't get from anyone else on this stage.
Secretary Gabay, you can respond to her, what she leveled at you, but then my question is, do you know budgets?
Absolutely. You'll see that 8 years of being Secretary of State, I've actually managed a state budget very well with investment of federal dollars, transformed an election system that included investments at the local, state levels. And so, no, if there's anybody who actually understands budgets and how to run a very effective department or agency and can do it at a much bigger level now, it's me. So it's not about the size. It's about the relationships that you're able to form. It's the engagement from employees that you're able to bring forward.
It's about the
and by the way, it's great. I
you.
love the fact that you took tobacco out of CBS. That's wonderful because it was a personal issue for you. But was it a personal issue for you when you laid off and referred to workers at Hudson Bay as low-hanging fruit?
Oh, I'm glad you raised that.
At the same time as you actually walked out with millions and millions of dollars in pay. That is not the kind of leadership that in the public sector
No, Nellie, you've got that wrong. You've got that
Hudson's
wrong.
Bay is where you went after
I went
CBS.
after CBS.
Is that quote accurate? Did you call them low-hanging fruit?
No, here's the low-hanging fruit.
Did you actually call
Nellie,
let me get an answer.
The low-hanging fruit was turning that business around, investing in technology, investing in our people, making sure our frontline workers had the support they needed to give the service they had. We took that business under my leadership from burning $1 billion a year in cash to cash flow neutral.
Okay.
That's exactly the kind of
Can we
leadership
stop promoting CBS? So it took cigarettes off the shelves and pushed pills on the streets. It took cigarettes off the shelves and pushed pills on the streets. CBS is not an organization that we want to model in the state of Rhode Island. It is not. A multi-billion-dollar budget's fine, but the values that drive the allocation of resources is far more important. And this discussion about values and numbers.
All right, it's fair, Governor.
I just like
Governor,
to respond to the budget issue. I thought we were here to talk about the state budget and not other budgets, right? So we're talking about the state budget, and the point was if they knew the current state budget, it is going to be lower next year because $1 billion of that is going to be taken out, and you're going to have a lower budget next year. They don't understand the state budget. I'll qualify that, state budget.
Alina, he mentioned the
And
opioid.
also, in terms of Secretary of State's office budget compared to the state budget, it's about 1,300 times more larger, the state budget, than the
But it runs incredibly. It's an agency where every single aspect of that agency runs incredibly well. And I get thanked by small business people for how we've been able to turn it around. In fact, we had more business incorporations during the pandemic than at any other time in the history of the state. While SNAP benefits, which is a very similar process of processing applications, you did not open up the offices so that SNAP benefits could be given out. And so real people had to go to food pantries because you were not.
So budgets have both sides. They have an income side and an expense side. Nellie's never managed the income side.
Okay. Dr. Munoz, folks, thanks. You leveled a serious accusation regarding the opioid crisis.
For CVS, absolutely.
CVS. Alina, do you have a right to respond to that?
I'm happy
that
to
was
respond
on your
to
watch.
that. And I want to also connect a few dots here. First, I completely agree with Nellie's statement on SNAP benefits. We were the only state in the country with fewer SNAP benefits. But Nellie, I also want to take issue with your taking credit for small businesses emerging during the pandemic, because that's exactly what happened across the country. Rhode Island was not special in that, and you really can't take credit for that. But on the opioid crisis, I'm very glad this came up because there's so much false information. My heart absolutely breaks for everyone. And I met a woman last week who lost her son, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking. I also am just so angry at Purdue Pharma, which put all these pills out there. But under my watch, I did a tremendous amount to turn this around. I started as president in 2014, and for 4 years, I led the retail business. Right. During that time period, we saw a 30% reduction in opioid prescribing under my watch. So those are real results, and they're very meaningful, and it took a lot of action to get there. And I'm proud of what I did both inside the company, across the industry, and working with 50 states, including Rhode Island, to reduce the number of pills that would be out on the street.
CVS is still a perpetrator. CVS is still a perpetrator of high-cost health care. We are in a pandemic. The governor has dismantled testing sites currently. He did not handle the vaccine equity issue correctly. We organized that in the community. We drove those clinics. And at the end of the day, Matt Brown wasn't there. Helena Folks was, thinking about running for governor and setting back on these minute clinic CVS models that did not work for the pandemic for us. And we're going into the fall where we continue to face a pandemic. I am the right candidate for the right office at the right time.
5 minutes till closing statements. And when we have to go to closing statements, let's talk about affordable housing. That's been on everybody's agenda. And then I want to talk about the homeless. Matt Brown, you camped out at the State House to draw attention to the homeless problem. Would you put the homeless back in the Nilo Hotel if you're governor against the wishes of the community? Would you do that?
We need to shelter them. There are a lot of solutions to this. We need to build transitional shelter so that nobody sleeps outside in our state. And let's be really clear. We're living in the richest country in the world, Gene. It is a policy decision. It is a policy choice by the people in power that some of our people sleep outside. Doesn't have to be that way. This governor took millions of dollars and gave it to the corporate developers to build luxury apartments in the Superman building that almost no one in the state can afford while we have people sleeping outside.
All right, Governor,
transitional shelter. Longer term, our plan is to build tens of thousands of truly affordable homes. We need to cap rent increases at 4%. Rents went up 34% in the last 18 months. People can't afford that. So we need to shift our priorities, and we can do that.
The neighbors by the Nilo Hotel told Channel 10, they walk by our house several times. They're seen looking in the yards. They're looking at the cars. The bus stop is a huge concern. They're walking by, sometimes trying to talk to the children. I have nothing against homeless, and I have nothing against Crossroads. The issue I have is that they put this in a residential neighborhood. Helena Folks, would you do that? Would you give millions of dollars to Crossroads to put people in the Nilo again?
We have a housing crisis, and I'll answer that, but I want to talk at the broader level.
Please answer it first.
At first, I think the big problem with Nilo was not communicating well with the neighbors, and I certainly would have done a better job of that. But on a more macro level, we're 20,000 units short. So we have a lot of people on the stage who say they've been working in housing forever who have not produced results. I did what anyone would do looking at a situation like this. I pulled experts together and I came up with ideas. They're all on my website, short, medium, and long term. They're all designed to deliver real results, because I think the difference on this stage is not what ideas you have, but how you bring people together and really hold them accountable for results.
We're on a tight timetable, 30 seconds each. Nellie, would you put them back in the nylon?
But I'm going to be the housing governor. How can you give me 30 seconds?
Well, go ahead and take 40.
All right. Anyway, housing is the #1 issue facing our state right now. And it is because housing is foundational to how well kids do in school. Housing is foundational to climate change issues. Housing is a social determinant of health. Every Rhode Islander deserves a safe and quality home. And I am the governor who knows how to do this. I was executive director of Housing Works Rhode Island. And yes, there are 2,000 homes that were built during the time that I was there. I know how to bring people together to get that housing built. And I have made a commitment through a very detailed housing plan to make sure that we solve this housing crisis once and for all and build a home building industry that's bar none in New England.
I don't like to do yes or no. Would you put them back in the NILO against the residents' wishes?
I would do it in a very different way.
Okay, Governor, you did that. You gave them millions.
It was the right decision at the time. I put $5 million on the table a few weeks before Matt decided to camp out in front of the State House. We were working with the providers to get that done. So, yes, and by the way, we put additional dollars in. My promise is that they will not, on the coldest day of the year, there will be shelter for anyone who wants it in the state of Rhode Island.
Dr. Munoz, would you do that?
These are organizations that we're working with continue to push resources into one side of the city, and no one challenges it. The people in these organizations are getting six-figure salaries and not working with the communities, not working with Direct Action for Rights and Equality, not working with George Wiley Center, not working with organizations that are doing the mutual aid work. What we have to do in Rhode Island is have participatory budgeting. We have to have discussions on how we deal with homelessness in terms of not just the people on the street, but the people living on friends' couches.
Are you going to give me a yes or a no?
What I'm going to say is, we need a community-driven approach, and it is not pushing all of the resources that are needed to one side of a city because the power brokers are on the other side.
All right, we are stopping. We are going to closing statements. You will all get 1 minute. Please address this camera. By order of lot, Secretary of State Gorbea, you go first.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Right now, we need better leadership in this state out of the governor's office. And I know that you know that for 30 years, I have been working for Rhode Islanders. I have been the person who has worked in housing issues and helped build 2,000 affordable homes. I have been your Secretary of State and made sure that we had transparent government and redid our lobbying laws to get rid of the stigma of 38 studios. I made sure that as Secretary of State, we protected the right to vote. And so as a candidate for governor now, you can trust what I'm going to say to you because I know how to get things done in the public sector, and it's by bringing people together. I have 30 years of working on these community problems and delivering real outcomes, real results. As a working mom of 3 kids, I know how hard it is out there. So we are going to fix this housing crisis. We are going to tackle the environment. We are going to have affordable childcare, and we are going to build a better Rhode Island for all of us.
Thank you, Secretary Gorbea. By order of the draw, Governor McKee, your closing statement, please.
18 months ago, I became governor in the biggest crisis, the biggest state of emergency in the history of the state of Rhode Island. Every decision I made was in the best interest of the people who live in the state of Rhode Island, and we got results from that. We went from the worst vaccinated state to the very best. We've gone from the opening of the economy, first in the Northeast, second in the country. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the history of the state of Rhode Island, and there's still good paying jobs available. I got a message from Shannon Gilkey, actually, that the Woonsocket Training Center actually opened up this evening. We're doing the work each and every day that matters to the people of the state of Rhode Island, and at the same time, managed the largest surplus in the history of the state of Rhode Island. Eliminated the car tax, $250 for child credit. We also gave pension relief to the veterans for the first time ever where they're not paying state taxes on their pensions. We're going to continue to work on the behalf of the people in the state of Rhode Island. I ask you for your vote on September 13th.
Thank you, Governor. Helena Bonanno Folks, your closing statement.
I'm so thrilled to be with all of you tonight, and this is a critical election. We're coming out of COVID, and we're getting billions of dollars coming our way. These dollars need to be put to our kids and our future. I listen to this debate tonight, and I think about the career politicians, and I think to myself, is this status quo good enough? Are we going to be okay with meh? No, I think we deserve much, much better. We need a leader who knows how to bring new thinking, who has a new path, who's going to do great things for our children and our grandchildren so they can thrive here. I've led big change in my life, and I've delivered real results, and I know how to do that for Rhode Island. We'll get big things done on health care, on housing, and on jobs of the future. But if you remember just one thing for tonight, it's education, education, education. I think it's the most critical thing that I can do as your governor. And I've said I will hold myself accountable. If I don't improve our kids' scores, I won't run again, because it's that important to our children, to our amazing teachers, and to everyone in this state that we have a thriving system. And I'm humbled and honored to ask for your vote.
Thank you, candidate, folks. Matt Brown, former Secretary of State Matt Brown, your closing statement, please.
Sometimes up here I feel like I'm at the Republican primary debate for governor, not the Democratic primary debate for governor. We've got Ms. Folks, who donated to Mitch McConnell, and under her leadership at CVS, they were found responsible for fueling the opioid crisis. We have Secretary Gorbea, who takes fossil fuel contributions for her campaign, who uses MAGA propaganda in her ads, who worked for a Republican governor. And worst of all, we have Dan McKee, who is administration is under an FBI criminal investigation. A third of those investigations.
It's a closing statement. There will be no interruptions. Take another 20 seconds. Go ahead.
A third of those investigations end in indictment. There's a good chance he's going to be indicted in office. It doesn't have to be this way. I've spent my whole life serving our community, running organizations like City Year that provides tutors to our public schools. I don't take any corporate money for my campaign. As governor, I'll end the corporate giveaways, raise taxes on the rich and fund our schools, raise the minimum wage to $19, enact a Medicare for all system, and a Green New Deal. We can do all these things, and I ask for your support on September 13th.
Thank you, Matt Brown. Our final closer is from Dr. Munoz. Look right at the camera.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Matt Brown took almost $10,000 from the Kidd family that has $69 million invested in Hess Corp. Just mind you that. I grew up in Central Falls. I experienced homelessness. I'm a medical doctor in this race in a time where we're facing a pandemic still. We need a free healthcare system. We need mixed, low-income, subsidized, and affordable housing. We need an equitable education funding formula. These things will not happen without political courage. I'll end my time with a story of Ellison Tarzan Brown, a person who ran barefoot until he won the marathon, Narragansett Indian tribal member. He died having sold every trophy for food because this state forgets about the working and the working poor. But when he climbed that mountain, they say a man rose up and an Indian nation descended. On September 13th, let the people vote Munoz and let's descend in victory towards a better Rhode Island.
Thank you. That concludes our closing statements. I want to thank all of the candidates for stepping up and stepping in the arena. It's not an easy thing to do. I appreciate, and I believe our audience appreciates all of you, and we appreciate you coming tonight. And I want to thank you for watching. That's our 2022 Democrat gubernatorial debate. One of these people will be the candidate for the Democrat Party. Vote. It's coming up around the corner. We want to thank Johnson & Wales for hosting us tonight. We appreciate their facilities. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you on the news.